Hi, welcome to If You Live It. This is an introduction for the Friday conversation of the Noble Eightfold Path. We have a quick introduction once you get into the video. We break down in systematic way quickly 1 through 8 what is part of this Eightfold Path. Then we get into on timestamp portions. Check the video description. You can jump to each one individually. We get into correct view, correct intention, correct speech, correct action, correct livelihood, correct effort, correct mindfulness, and correct concentration. You can jump straight to those in the video timestamps, or you can watch this entire video from start to finish. Again, this is a quick under-minute introduction of what you're about to see. If you are a practicing Buddhist, if you are a Buddhist curious, if you have not understood or been able to comprehend what the Eightfold Path is and how to apply it to your life, if you are already applying this to your life and you're looking for more, an easier way to understand this, a direct pathway of how to take this into the modern world of being in the world but not of it, and use this to find God, to find truth, to reach the state of Nirvana, to be a Buddha yourself. Dive into this. Let this be a jump off point. Again, If You Live It is in some ways modern Buddhism, recontextualized for a modern world, for a modern audience, to be in this world but not of it. Enjoy the Friday conversation about the Noble Eightfold Path. Many blessings. Have a great day, great weekend, great week. Peace and love. I'm out of here. Welcome to If You Live It, a pathway to freedom. Found on ifyouliveit.com, found via these videos, found on social media outlets, found all over. You can check it out in a lot of different ways. Today, we are talking about the second part of our series, diving into Buddhism, diving into the realities and the truths found in the Four Noble Truths, the foundational principles of the pathway of Buddhism found in the Eightfold Path. Last Friday, we went over the Four Noble Truths. We had an extended introduction into how, if you live it, how this particular pathway is a mirror of Buddhism. It's a modern recontextualization. It is an application of Buddhism to actually remain in the world, but not be part of it. Not having to separate yourself, not having to live the monastic lifestyle, not having to renounce to the physical world all attachment to the ways and hair and clothing and life and relationships and friendships. And it's a way to be in the world but not of it, while still practicing the applications, the spiritual principles of Buddhism. In no way is it better than or less than, or putting one down or propping one up. It's simply something that you can use to find God for yourself, to reach Nirvana, to understand the realities of Buddhahood for yourself. You can take it all the way to the bank. And the realization that came forward in the last video was that it happened in real time. The realization was that this entire pathway, the truth that is presented to the person speaking to you at this exact moment, was the same exact truth presented to the Buddha. It was the same exact truth that was at the heart of Jesus' message. It was the same exact truth that's taught by Krishna. At a certain point, when one has a full realization of the self, a full realization of what it is they arise out of, what it is they're part of, when the self with a capital S comes into the fold and presents itself as the entirety of what one's experience is, it's the same realization, regardless of what the words would be used to call it, regardless what the pathway's name is, regardless of any of those exterior factors, any of those exterior paths, any of those extremities. And as was stated in the last Friday video, we went over the Four Noble Truths. This week so far, what's been presented on ifyouliveit.com through the content section, through the YouTube, the podcast, so on and so forth, is we looked at Chapter 8, Step 8 of If You Live It, the recontextualization of the 12 steps, which are part of the entire program, which was dealing with starting to move towards the end of our forgiveness section, moving into building our list of people, places, things, and institutions that we need to make an amends to. And it also happens to be about acceptance. Then on Wednesday, we dive deeper into acceptance, what it is, what it isn't, how valuable it is, the power that comes through someone who is resonating with acceptance, who's coming from a place of acceptance, who's embracing acceptance, who is currently experiencing a lifestyle that emanates out from them, characterized as acceptance. And today, in this video, very exciting, we're going to go through the Eightfold Path. We're going to go piece by piece, and we're going to let the Holy Spirit, we're going to let God, we're going to let the Spirit of the Buddha, we are going to let Krishna, we are going to let all higher truths, all sources come through this channel, through this video to you. And we'll see together what we come up with. I don't script these. I don't know what these are. Mason is completely separated from these videos with the degree to the mouth is moving and the words are coming and the vibrations of speech are being put forth. But Mason is not existent in this. But a filter, but a mouth, but a channel. These truths that you will hear in this video are coming directly from the source, directly from God, directly to you. So let's dive right in. What we're going to do is we are going to I'm going to read what the Eightfold Path is really quickly, all the different rights. All right. Then we're going to dive into it one by one, one by one. All right. And that's how we're going to finish this video. This video will be broken up into an introduction, and then it'll be broken up into timestamps for each piece of the Eightfold Path. And I think what we might see together is how If You Live It incorporates this, embodies this information. And then I think probably what will happen is we'll get some more deeper information into each one of these aspects of the Eightfold Path. Today will not be an exhaustive explanation and exploration into Buddhism, an exhaustive exploration into the Eightfold Path. What today most likely will end up being will be the Eightfold Path contextualized in such a way that you watching this in this world have the opportunity to start applying this in maybe ways that you haven't thought possible before. So let's dive right in. First part of the Eightfold Path. Number 1, correct view. Number 2, correct intention. Number 3, correct speech. Number 4, correct action. Number 5, correct livelihood. Number 6, correct effort. Number 7, correct mindfulness. And number 8, correct concentration. All right, now let's dive deeper into the first. Where I'm pulling this information is from the Encyclopedia Britannica, just so you know what our central source is. There are so many places you can get this information from. I could pull it directly off the shelf. I could pull it from all kinds of different Buddhist communities from around the world, but Encyclopedia Britannica does a pretty good job of making it bite-sized, all right? So let's look at the first one. Correct view, an accurate understanding of the nature of things, specifically the Four Noble Truths. What I'd say is, for more information on the Four Noble Truths, where we really dived into them in a much deeper way, go back to the last video. Go to the video entitled The Four Noble Truths and let it sink in. Let it be absorbed. But as far as they apply to this conversation today, let's go back in a way where we're looking at If You Live It as the basis. And all of those Buddhists out there who are happen to watch this, all those who are practicing Buddhism, all those who are yogis in training, all those who use meditation as a central pillar of their spiritual practices, think how familiar this will sound to what you already know, but maybe see how something in here is even more practical, of use to you. So let's look at what If You Live It is. And when we think about the Four Noble Truths, what we're thinking about is there is the truth that all is dukkha, okay? All is suffering, number 1. That there is a reality to escape the dukkha, that there is a way to see the dukkha that allows one to transcend it, and then there is the fourth noble truth, which is a pathway to follow. All right, and in the entirety of If You Live It is one long conversation about those Four Noble Truths from a different perspective, from a perspective of talking about it through the lens of consciousness, through a perspective of looking at it through the lens of the ego, the mind. How to transcend it, how to transcend fears, how to have your own realization of the self, your own realization of God, your own realization of the higher self, how to reach Christhood, Buddhahood, Krishnahood, whatever you choose to call it. Words don't matter. We are already separated from God through words. Truth is already delineated away from several layers down through words. So it's the energy that will come through these words that are most important. So if we look at If You Live It, what is it? If You Live It is a recontextualization of the 12 steps that were originally gifted to the creators of Alcoholics Anonymous, to Bill Wilson, in a white light moment, in a moment where all stopped, all worries, all fears, all doubts were parted. And in that moment, an absolute intensity of love, unconditional love from such a power presented itself that it recontextualized everything and spawned the modern AA that we have it. And in AA, there are these things called the 12 steps. And the 12 steps were originally gifted as the opportunity to help someone transcend an enslavement, an addiction to alcohol, to being an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic. In the world of AA, I would still be considered an alcoholic. I no longer drink. I no longer consume alcohol. My father died of alcoholism. My uncle is about to die of alcoholism. My great uncle died of alcoholism. My family are alcoholics or binge drinkers or whatever you'd want to call it. I'm not here to tell someone what they are or what they're not. But the reality of my life is that it created an action towards, if I had continued drinking constantly, which was the reality, I was going to take my life. I was at that place. And we've talked about this, we've gone into that, but the reality is it has now been 8 years past, 8 years of sobriety. And in working the 12 steps, in going to a meeting every day for the first year, in getting a sponsor, in being part of a community, in serving that community, what I realized several months in was that I was walking in the footsteps of Jesus. I was applying practical spirituality into this life to be a human again, to depart from sanity. That is the gift of the 12 steps. The 12 steps allows you to see your part to play. It removes victimhood. Now, when the steps were done, when they were completed, there was this absolute awareness that these steps are of value to the world, not just to those suffering from alcoholism or a drug addiction or an eating addiction or a sex addiction or addiction of any kind. Because at the root of it, what we all have is we have an addiction to the belief system that we are what we see in the mirror, that we're our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our desires, our cravings, our wants, the dopamine sensors going ba, 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 everywhere. We are not that. We're more akin to, at first, what experiences those. From that lens of you thinking that you're all those things, it's really you're experiencing those things and then you're calling them mine. And because you're hypnotized by these things and the mind constantly moving, you think you're that. Then as you find the spiritual pathway, as you start to move down that pathway, you have moments where you kind of witness life taking place around you. And there's actual levels of consciousness, unconditional love into sainthood, into the opening of Satchidananda, into the awareness that of how we would classically call it enlightenment setting in, where you become the witness. And you are no longer the first person experiencer. You are more like you're pulled back from the scene, watching what's taking place until inevitably, if you continue to surrender over all your attachments that arise, even to the bliss that presents itself as enlightenment sets in as a subjective experience in a physical condition and a viewpoint that changes everything. If you continue to surrender over even that ecstasy, even that bliss, even that beyond emotional state of absolute perfection, you start coming from a place where one would describe it as observing. And you're removed even further from witnessing and experiencing, and you're at a lens now where you see the reality of all happening around you in such a way that you realize you are not you. There is no separateness. There is no apart from. And if you live it, it came from this. It came from this realization. It came from a life lived where earlier in life I had experienced the reality of God present. So there was no longer this question of, is God real? But there was this deafening desire to be able to share that information while still knowing that I was a piece of crap, to be quite honest. How am I going to share with the world the realities of God and the reality that God is real while not being a poster child for someone that should be sharing that message? So If You Live It is the 12 steps. It's undergirded by Dr. Hawkins' research into the scales and maps of consciousness that he created along with his wife and her right arm and all that. You can look into yourself. It's not mine. I don't own it. We talk about Byron Katie and her work, which she calls the work, found originally in Loving What Is. And we talk about Krishna, and we talk about the Buddha, and we talk about Jesus, and we talk about Lao Tzu, and we break down similar teachings in every particular chapter and step, and we have longer conversations within If You Live It, how to contextualize that into your own life, mostly as how I failed and or that presented itself in this particular life. Okay, so that's if you live it as a macro view. As a micro view, it's broken up into three sections: surrender, forgiveness, and gratitude. The first three steps are all about the surrender process. When you hear just let go, just surrender, do you know what that means? Because I didn't. There are very few people in this world that have the opportunity to actually teach you surrender. When you look at the Four Noble Truths, what you see is surrender. You see looking at, awareness of, realization around, and then a pathway to take. Then, and if you live it, steps 4 through 9, you see the forgiveness process, how to forgive, what is forgiveness, the power of forgiveness, why when you forgive yourself and the world and another and all these things, what you're actually doing is you're actually setting your soul free. You're transcending the ego in the process. Okay, and then in steps 10, 11, and 12, it's about how to come from a place of gratitude, not pretending you're grateful for things, but actually being gratitude and what happens when that is your lens. Whoa, is all I can say. All right. So when we look at the first part of the Eightfold Path, correct view, the view is pointed towards something greater than yourself. That is the program of If You Live It. That is the root of it. That is the intent of all of this. The intent of this person representing this information to you currently, allowing it to come through him, is because the intent is pointed towards serving God. And the way that this person serves God is by serving you. And the way that I'm serving you is by delivering this message and agreeing to be a teacher in this world, to bring this to you, to take on all that entails, all the negativity, all the anger of the world, all the judgment, all the karma, all of it. There's been an agreement to take that on from a collective standpoint to deliver this to you. Because the purpose of this person speaking to you is to be in this world but not of it, to have a life that's lived like a prayer, to point you back to the realities and truth of what it means to actually follow Jesus, to what it means to actually embody Krishna, to dwell in Krishna, what it means to come from a place of self-realization to become a Buddha, what it means to be part of the way in Taoism, to find the way, to be one with the way. These are all parts of this, number one, of the Eightfold Path. All right, so correct view. I think we're moving on. All right, number 2, correct intention. Avoiding thoughts of attachment, hatred, and harmful intent. There's this life, the way we'll look at it is as a coin for a moment. And what we'll say is that the coin, you flip it up in the air, or you spin it on a table, or you hold it in your hand and you look at it. Life is the coin. Content is the coin. Interaction with the world is the coin. Positions are the coin. Opinions are the coin. Judgments are the coin. Angers, fears, resentments are the coin. Joys, prosperity, peace, happiness is the coin. On one side of the coin represents higher realities of truth, which are also part of the ego, part of the mind. When we started talking about courage and willingness and acceptance and the intellect and much more that goes into that side of the coin. On the other side of the coin, we have the lower side of being a human. We have shame, apathy, guilt, and grief, remorse, craving, pride, anger, fear, desire. We have taking, trying to get. On the higher side of the coin, we have giving, serving. Now, when we look back at this particular piece, correct intention, avoiding thoughts of attachment, hatred, and harmful intent. There will be parts where the language that's used in English is the language that I'm operating in. So there may be a disagreement with the English language, and I don't have the original Pali. I don't have the original language with which maybe the English doesn't represent it perfectly. But in the English language, it's not about avoiding. It's about letting go of your belief system that that coin is you. Even the hand flipping the coin is not you. You're more akin to the awareness of the coin being flipped by a body that isn't quite you. Your experience of this world is with the content of this world, the physical sensations of this world. This body is a vessel that allows the seeming separateness from what you actually are to be present as in this illusory form that you buy into. The mind, the ego, is the mechanism with which buys into the fact that it's separate from God. You believe you're the mind. You believe you're the ego. It's not about avoiding the world. It's about seeing it. It's about walking in it without leaving your footsteps. It's about not trying to change things, not trying to proselytize, not trying to tell people you know something when you don't even know you're not your thoughts. It's okay to have your opinions, and it's okay to give them, and these things happen around the clock, around the clock. Let me give you an example. No matter where one finds themselves, they are always at the place where surrender and forgiveness are important. You're never not surrendering, you're never not forgiving. Because when you transcend the personal ego, when you transcend the personage, the singular, when that's transcended, what happens is then you take on the collective without the collective being aware of it. You're not aware that throughout the day, I'm surrendering over your baggage. I'm surrendering over your fears. I'm surrendering over your attachments, your angers, your judgments, constantly. Recently, in the United States of America, we had an election that's putting the United States in a trajectory that most of the country doesn't agree with. And I'm not here to talk politically, but what I mean is the trajectory, not Democrats or Republicans, the trajectory is fear or love. That's the trajectory. Are we going to be a country filled with fear, filled with division, filled with derision, filled with putting down, filled with otherizing, filled with blaming? Again, this is not political, Democrats or Republicans. This is spiritual. And there is a propensity right now for people in charge of the country to choose fear over and over and over and over again, selling it, peddling it, buying it, giving it. And it's really for money. It is at the root of capitalism. I mean, at the absolute root is not good or bad. At the root of capitalism, it's actually a wonderful thing that creates capital, that provides a life and opportunities and choices. Capitalism is not bad. But serving the master of money is where this fear is coming from. And fear is the oldest thing to sell in the book, other than sexuality. But sexuality arises out of fear, meaning that when someone is selling their body for money, it's out of the fear that they can't do something else, or that they're stuck in a place where they're forced to do something else. It's coming out of a lower egoistic state. It's not coming out of a higher reality of God present. And what took place here was, recently, there was judgment arising constantly in awareness for those who have been pushing this fear, who have voted for this fear, who are desiring this fear, who are stuck in this fear, who are creating a reality where this fear was even able to be present the way that it's present as a macro within the United States. And that judgment was sitting there, and that judgment was being surrendered over as a personal judgment. And what was being missed is it wasn't personal. It was coming out of the collective judgment of those who did not choose a particular political figure against those who did. It was coming out of the fears of those who even chose for this political directive and are going, what is happening? This is not what we want. We're not asking for this. We just want to lower inflation. And my wife grew up in the evangelical church, fundamental evangelical church, loves praise and worship. We have a new son. Our son is 8 months old at this particular time and is an absolute bundle of love and joy and a gift for the world that will supersede anything that I'm doing with regards to value and purpose in this world. He has come here into this body this time to be a light that many of you watching this will get to know one day. He will change the world legitimately just by his presence, for what he came in as is already that which is changing the world. The Buddha and this entity here, we did not come in a place where we are already the change. It required an intent, the right intent. The way this language talks about it is avoiding attachments, avoiding belief systems. You don't avoid it. Avoidance means that I'm not going to look at it. Avoidance can take on a language and a scope where fear will become part of the reality of my avoidance because I'm fearful of this thing. You do not need to be fearful of fear. You do not need to be fearful of your attachments and your belief systems. You don't need to be fearful of the mind. You don't need to be fearful of attractive humans. You don't need to be fearful of lust. You don't need to be fearful of greed. You don't need to be fearful of God. And there's the root of it. The Christian religion is rooted on the fear of God. Because at the root of Christianity is Judaism. And Judaism promotes a healthy fear of Yahweh. The fear of going somewhere else when you die is at the root of evangelical Christianity. The fear of judgmental God. God is not judgmental. At the root of what's happening in America is fear. And at the root of that fear is that somehow their shame is going to be seen. Somehow we could blame someone else for where we are as opposed to experience the reality of where we are as being pretty awesome. America is a wonderful place, and the people of America love you. They love themselves. They're actually wonderful. They represent freedom and hope that some are really lost right now. And that's at the root of what I was sharing with you. The part that's talking about correct intention. America has lost its intention. It's lost its correct intention right now. Doesn't mean it will always be that way. But in the moment at hand, I'm sorry that we've lost our intention. When we talk about spirituality, though, when we talk about if you live it, and we look at this Eightfold Path, what is your intention? Have you ever stated your intention? Have you stated to God, to yourself, to another, to the world around you on a piece of paper, in your phone, through a voice memo, over a text, via an email? Have you written it on a wall? Have you created a board that shows what your intention is? What is your intention? Can you define what your intention is? Is your intention to know God? Is your intention to move to a place where reincarnation is not something that's needed? Is your intention to work off karma? Is your intention to forgive? Is your intention to serve God? Is your intention to let go of your opinions and your belief systems? Is your intention to see truth? Have you stated this? Is your intention from a health standpoint to have a body that's healthy and not falling apart? Do you have an intention for your relationships? Meaning, is there a direction you have chosen to be the North Star for these different aspects of your lives? That's very important to see here. With number one, correct view, right? The view is that all is dukkha, all right? All is an illusion. All content will not bring you happiness. There's not a single bit of content that will deliver continual happiness in your life. Having a child will not make you happy. Being married will not make you happy. Buying that car will not make you happy. Getting that house will not make you happy. Getting the Botox will not make you happy. It won't make you happy. It'll make you want more of it because it's fueled by dopamine. It's not coming from a place of acceptance where serotonin is the neurotransmitter that's actually producing a brain state that allows you to find appreciation, joy, and satisfaction. You will never find satisfaction with dopamine. If you live a life of getting, you have an intent that's pointing south. It's pointing away from God. Okay? So when we looked at correct intention, where is yours? And it's not with avoiding painful things. It's not with avoiding where the mind goes. It's with looking at it, seeing it, realizing there's a way to transcend it, walking down that path. If you live it as a pathway. Buddhism is a pathway. Hinduism is a pathway. Going through the heart is a pathway. Service is a pathway. The mind is a pathway. Active inaction is a pathway. Action is a pathway. There are a lot of pathways in this world that can deliver you to a place where you have your own realization with God, your own realization of self. But what pathway are you walking down? Have you even set an intent towards that of a pathway where it's going to allow your entire choice matrix to focus into such a way that you're choosing the pathway, you're choosing the way over and over and over and over again? You don't know God by reading about God. You don't know God by going to church on a Sunday and not actually putting anything to practice. You don't know God by going to the Gurdwara and just listening to others tell you about what's coming out of the Holy Book. You don't know God through reading the Tao Te Ching. You don't know God through thinking about God. You know God by putting into practice the Gospels. You can know God by putting into practice Krishna's words. You know God by walking the Eightfold Path, by studying the Four Noble Truths and applying them. You only have your own experience with God through emulation. Words are crap. It's how we have to deliver it to you here because it points in a particular direction, but you don't know God through your words. No proselytizing about Jesus shows anything about you knowing Jesus. The religion of Christianity today is the religion of Paul. Paul had a vision on his road to Damascus, which says he was blinded. He was blinded by truth, okay? A truth that separated what he thought his intent was for this life, to recontextualize it the same as Bill Wilson, the same as the experience that happened to this person at 20. It recontextualized everything, and you realize there's a higher truth that you're moving towards that you have to figure out. But modern Christianity is not based on the teachings of Jesus. If it was, this world would be perfect. It would be beautiful. There would be multiples of billions of people that were serving God by serving man, by giving of what they have, by giving their clothes, by providing meals, by not choosing war, not choosing eradicating entire races and religions from this planet, not reciprocating with tenfold violence when they were struck with violence. Number 3, correct speech, refraining from verbal misdeeds such as lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and senseless speech. How are you talking? How are you communicating? Are you gossiping? Are you promoting truth? Are you tearing people down on social media? Are you propping up what you find of value? Are you promoting light? Are you being light? Are you promoting love? Are you promoting not stealing, not lying, not cheating, not tolerating those who do in your life? Are you being an example for others to follow, even with your words? Are you partaking in drunkenness? Are you tearing people down? Are you looking for verbal altercations and opportunities to own someone? There's this funny thing happening in the United States where there is we have these two parties, these two political parties, and one finds immense joy, not the whole party, but a particular piece of a party finds this immense joy, and I find it hilarious, the language of this, owning. We're going to own you through some kind of social media torment or by making videos, making fun of you. Do you know when you make fun of someone, and this isn't a left versus a right or right versus a left, I could care less what side anyone would fall on a political spectrum. It doesn't matter in the slightest, okay? What's funny is this owning. You can't own anything. Separate the owning online as the thing we were just talking about. Just look at the physicalized sensation of owning something. What can you actually own? What can you take with you when you leave here? Let's use that as a definition. When this life is over, what are you taking with you? What are you taking with you? You're not even taking this body with you. You would say at the very least you own this body. What owns it? What owns it? You think you have ownership of this body? You didn't create this body. You don't sustain this body. How are you managing the body? How are you a steward of the body? Are you taking your home with you? Are you taking your car with you? How can you truly own anything? Owning something would be like being able to consume it and having it become part of the particulates of your molecular makeup. You're not chewing up your watch and having it become part of your body. You can't own anything. You have temporary stewardship while physicality allows it. And then it passes on as junk, to be quite honest. Eventually all becomes junk. You can own a book, but does it mean that it's actually you? So when we look at this, we have to look at language. And that's what this whole particular piece is. Correct speech, refraining from verbal misdeeds such as lying, divisive speech, harsh speech. Are you tearing people down? Or are you building people up? Are you otherizing? Are you committing verbal fraud every day? Are you lying to yourself and the world around you? Are you lying to yourself through words every day when you tear someone down out of your own insecurity about how you feel about yourself? And therefore you look out in the world and you see it out there and you judge yourself, but yet you're going to put someone else down when you don't even have the ability to see that actually you're putting yourself down. If you look out in the world and someone angers you, it's because what's inside of you that needs to be forgiven and surrendered is representing itself as what's allowing you to see it out in the world. Every time you have harsh speech, you lie, you steal and cheat with your words, you're not winning. you're not making anything great. It's actually pointing you towards what it is you need to surrender, what it is you need to forgive, what it is you need to let go of. So let's think about it this way. Within If You Live It, right speech can be our delivery to God of truth. The only way that surrender truly, truly works and helps you transcend things within your life, actually get past them where they no longer hold any definable merit to you, anything that's holding a noose around your neck, is when you are radically honest with God. If you have a desire to own something and then you surrender over, the placid side of things that come up, like, oh, I surrender over this wanting of, I surrender over this desire for, but at your heart, you truly want it still, or you truly desire it because you think you need this for some particular reason to be something that you're not. Surrender over to God the actual lie that you're telling yourself that God won't know that you actually want this thing. Surrender over the wanting of it. Tell God, I don't want to let go of this. I see no value in letting go of this belief system or letting go of this person or letting go of attachment to this thing or that thing. Surrender that over. Be radically honest with the fact that what you are doesn't even feel capable of doing something or not doing something or being something or not being something. Surrender over not being able to stop talking about people. So you can get to the root where God shows you at the root of why you talk about others is because that's how you feel about yourself. Allow God to show you yourself. Yourself. You're not a victim because something's happening to you or in this world. Nothing happens to you, it happens for you. All that is in your life is karmically perfect because it's supposed to be there so you can transcend it, so you can let go of your attachment to it, so you can see the illusory state that it is. Correct action. Refraining from physical misdeeds such as killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Correct action. At the root of this is, are we going to serve or be served? Are we going to give? Are we going to take? Correct action. It's that simple. Are we going to surrender when an attachment or a belief system arises? Are we going to forgive everyone around us for everything all the time? Are we going to come from a place where we're grateful for the trials and tribulations that come into our life because we see them as happening for us and not to us? What are we going to do? What do you do? What's working for you? If you're watching this and you don't wake up from a place where happiness is what's present the moment your eyes wake up, there's so much more to life for you. Whatever you're doing is not working for you. If you think your joy is found in the next raise or in the next vacation or in the next beer or in the next joint or in the next, you name it, sexual encounter, that's where you're looking for joy, for happiness, for some kind of satisfaction, you are lost. I've been there. Been there, buddy. Been there, ladies. Been there, men. Been there. I was in hell ready to kill myself because I had lived this life to the max of trying to get from it and not give. Let's read that one more time. Correct action. Refraining from physical misdeeds such as killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Are you honest with your sexual partners? Do you use Bumble and Tinder and some of these other things to just have sex with people? Do you lie to people to have sex with them? Do you use sex as a weapon? Are you holding people hostage with sex? Is your entire relationship that you're living in based in loveless sex? Sex is just sex. Sexual acts are just sexual acts. They're not God. That's not how you know God. You don't know God by taking from another, by buying another prostitute, by being a prostitute, by going to a massage parlor where you know what it is. It's about a happy ending and it's not about actually having your muscles relaxed. If you find yourself at a place where you are a sex worker and you need to get out, chase after God and ask God to help you and run away. There will be people that help you. If you're those who go and pay for sex workers, stop. Because that's not it's not right action. Killing's a pretty straightforward one. One of the hardest lessons that Jesus taught was when someone smacks one side of your face, give them the other side. Killing is one of these things where in the moment there is a culpability or a responsibility. Okay? You're responsible for your actions, or you're culpable for those actions. Anything you do when you take the life of another, you take on that karma. You take it on. No one needs you. All right. It doesn't mean you're not going to be at a place where you have responsibility to help others or to take care of a family or so on and so forth. But this whole world is an illusion. If someone is trying to kill you, your body will have a physical and natural reaction to either fight back, to run away, or to crumble. You really don't even have the ability to choose what it is you're going to do unless you are training these neurons. You're training these thoughts in a constant place where you're prepared for, ready for, and available for. Where killing becomes something that is of value is when there are those attempting to wrongfully enter where you are and put your life at jeopardy based on their desire to take from you. And when you stand up from a place of patriotism, there is no greater love than those who would lay down their life for those of their fellow countrymen. That's a great quote for this. But killing in the name of taking is not going to take you to a place where you find peace and happiness and joy and prosperity. Very few of us will have to come into contact with the need to kill or be killed. But there is a reality where you can escape this world if that's where you find yourself by saying, God, to thee, I allow this person to take my life, or I choose not to take on the karma of murdering another. Or there's a place where you say, Lord, I will take this person's life because they have put myself and my family in a position where I have no other choice. But if you're part of a group that goes around the world killing and taking in the name of whatever it is, nationalism, pride, egoistic superiority, you will not find peace here or not here. You will find yourself in a place where, well, you'll figure it out. Or number 5, correct livelihood. Avoiding trades that directly or indirectly harm others, such as selling slaves, weapons, animals for slaughter, intoxicants, or poisons. Correct livelihood. What are you doing for work? Are you at a place where you're being asked to sell your soul and lie for a company? Are you at a place where you are choosing to lie for the sake of making money? Are you coming from a place where you're working for yourself or for a company that's based out of how you can give the best product or the best service or the best value to your customer? Are you coming at a place where you're serving God by serving man through being a pastor, a preacher, a teacher, an imam, so on and so forth? It's not necessarily about what it is you do, it's about how you do it. Okay, so for example, let's look at a pastor or a preacher or a priest or anybody that represents teaching about a religion. Are you being honest about knowing God or not knowing God? Are you being honest about your porn addictions? Are you being honest about being a philanderer? Are you being honest about cheating on your taxes? Are you being honest about being drunk? Are you being honest about all the ways that you find separation from God? That you find your life less than at times than what it could be? Are you honest about these things? Are you honest with your congregation? Are you honest with your people? That you don't actually know God? That your life is not something that should be emulated? That you're not quite sure what to say or what to do about different aspects of your religion because you find there to be a discrepancy as well? Do you teach about the actual reality of your book that was created as the basis of your religion, how it was created, where it comes from? Do you tell the truth about you being this teacher of whatever you're practicing religious-wise? Do you not tell the truth out of fear that you won't be able to get another job without this? If you're working in the capitalistic world, if you're working for a company, in my own kind of recent life experience, back during the COVID years, my particular business needed to be moved into a world that went more into the private lens of our capitalistic society, because I worked directly with public institutions all over the place. And when people were at home, there was no need to do what I did with regards to where they would congregate usually. And so I took on a private gig with a private company and found out during that time that that company was a fake company. It didn't actually do what it said it did, and it was selling lies constantly around the clock, and simultaneously tearing people's lives apart by being part of this gaslighting operation. And then at a certain point when that was seen, I could no longer work for that company. What if I had chosen to continue working for that company and just sold lies? Those who are still part of the company that know that it's all one giant lie, and they're doing their best to kind of find their way around that lie and justify whatever they're doing based on, I don't know, saying that maybe in some way it helps people. You know what's going on. And I know you're not happy. You have to go to work every day and you take a check to lie. How many people here take a check to lie? And then wonder why they're not happy, wonder why they're an alcoholic, wonder why the only way they find a little bit of peace is through a video game or through sex or through a drug or through the vacation that they finally get that separates them from that particular space. Burnout in the workforce is a direct product usually of not being integrous at the workforce, or not having an integrous company that gives you an opportunity to build into something and help people in a way that makes money at the same time. Very few people find themselves at a level of burnout if they're in an environment that is conducive to growth and integrity and capitalistic society through those lenses. You don't have to work there anymore. You can find another job. Don't sell your soul for a paycheck. I've sold my soul in the past for a paycheck before everything changed. I sold lies. I didn't want to look at the truth, so I avoided it. And in avoiding it, I had plausible deniability. Not any longer. I would not sell you something fake if my life depended on it, because the karma that would take on to this body would probably create a separation with the reality of God that's present today that's not worth any gold, any promise of anything that the world has to offer. This world does not sell you happiness in reality. It sells you the promise of happiness. It's a lie. Again, you will not be able to buy anything that creates happiness. You won't even be able to marry anything that creates happiness. There are different things in our life that provide moments of joy or opportunities to be thankful, where we can find happiness in at times, or peace in, or prosperity in, or gratitude from, but that not take it and put it in our soul and have it come out of us. Two totally different things. Similar, and from a certain vantage point, one and the same, but from your vantage point, two totally different things. Number 6, correct effort. Abandoning negative states of mind that have already arisen, preventing negative states that have yet to arise, and sustaining positive states that have already arisen. Correct effort. Let's read that one more time. Abandoning negative states of mind that have already arisen, preventing negative states that have yet to arise, and sustaining positive states that have already arisen. Interestingly enough, if we look at the 5 pieces that come before 6 in the Eightfold Path, by practicing these, by thinking through these, by working through these, you will come from a place where step 6, you are actually embodying this. Now, you can't stop thoughts and feelings and emotions from arising. So that's an incorrect statement. Again, now this may be based on the English version of an ancient text that wasn't written in English, so it's the language that we have. But if we're using language, you can't stop your thoughts from arising, you can't stop your feelings from arising, you can't stop your emotions from arising. But what happens is when you start looking at them, when you start coming from a place of surrendering them, when you use Byron Katie's the work to actually dissect them, when you understand that all content arises out of something much larger called context, that nothing happens to you and that happens for you, and you're able in the moment to surrender over the juice your ego gets from a positionality or from an opinion or from embodying some particular thought or feeling or emotion that comes up, from the victimhood that you get. Oh, poor me. There's no poor me. When I look back at this life, you know how many times I said, poor me, and I was the cause. It was my viewpoint. It was what I was doing. It was, oh, how is this going to hurt me? How are people going to think about me? Who cares? Get a life. If you're sitting here thinking, how's someone going to think about me because I'm chasing after God, you surrender that over. Come on. Wake up. You're not a victim. You're not a victim. Everything is karmic. Everything. It doesn't mean everything is pleasant, or that you would choose everything, or that you have to continue to put yourself back into a situation where you're abused or taken advantage of or tormented. No. Being spiritual doesn't mean, chasing after God doesn't mean that you have to continually put yourself back into the position of target. Forgiving doesn't mean that you forget. Surrendering over your attachment to your belief systems allows the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions that will inevitably arise to have less power, for you to able to see them as just this forceful thing that arises that's here to show me my way home, that's here to show me what needs to be surrendered over, that's here to give me a definable pathway to walk down so I can see clearly that what God is showing me is what I need to let go of next, what I have to see through next in order to reach a place where what's next is possible. The entirety of everything is already present in you. We surrender, we forgive, we see through things, not avoid things. We see through things by looking at them, not trying to change them, surrendering over our attachment to them, the belief that we are them, so that we can see that what we need next, we already are. Your mind, your ego tries to make you think you're less than. It's the sponsor of insecurity. It's the sponsor of worry and the fears and the shames and better than and less than and opposites. And there are no opposites, folks. That's an illusion. It's a positionality. There's no cause. It's a position. It's an illusion. There is not creation versus evolution. It's the evolutionary process of creation constantly representing itself in the moment of exactly right now. There's no hot versus cold. There's the absence of heat, which we call some degree of cold. There's not light versus dark, light or dark. There's the absence of light, which we would call dark. And different degrees of that light being present or less present is how we would define the darkness of a situation. A visual to always keep in your mind about chasing after God is that you could be in a forest of darkness, and 500 yards away, someone could light a candle and you will see it. And I mean a darkness where you can't see your hands in front of your face, that dark. 500 yards away, I see a candle lit, a single candle. All you need is one candle, one truth, one nugget, one piece of intent. One of these eightfold paths, one of these aspects of the eightfold path. One moment of surrender, deep, honest surrender. God, I need help. Please help me. I give it to you. I don't even know if you exist, but please hear me cry out. Please, I surrender this life over. Show me a better way to do it. One moment of that can change everything. One moment of deep forgiveness for yourself can change everything. Can create a whole world of realization that's not present to you currently. Again, that's what If You Live It is about. That's what Buddhism is about. That's what Taoism and Hinduism and Christianity, that's what all these religions are about. They're about seeing something greater than yourself so you have an opportunity to have an experience different than being a slave to this place. You can be a physicalized indentured servant, but not be a slave to the indentured servitude, because what's inside of you is free. A man searched for meaning, Viktor Frankl, in a concentration camp, and decides that there is one thing left which you cannot take Adolf Hitler, and that is that will inside to continue. We have it within us that little piece of light, that single candle of truth can open up the entire sunrise, can take us to the water source, can show us a way out, can show us a way out. Number 7, Correct mindfulness, awareness of body, feelings, thought, and phenomena, the constituents of the existing world. Again, correct mindfulness, awareness of body, feelings, thoughts, and phenomena. Really, that 7 should be before 6. And then if you live it, it's really part of our opening dialogue, 60, 70, 80 pages that come before we ever even get into the steps. It's about seeing the words, seeing the illusion, seeing the trappings, creating a language around, and let's read that one more time, creating mindfulness, awareness of body, feelings, thought, and phenomena. So this is one place that I would say, if you flip 6 and 7, it would actually create even more of a value force to you. So being aware is the first thing in surrendering something over, awareness of it. This thing presents itself, I'm aware of it. This thought arises, I'm aware of it. This feeling arises, I'm aware of it. This emotional set arises, there is awareness of it. Stimuli arises in any way, and awareness presents itself of it. It is just past that awareness, right past that, where we start calling it mine, and then we take ownership of it, and we believe it's our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. And when we say our, mine, we believe we're these things. You didn't ask that thought to arise. You didn't ask that feeling to arise. You didn't ask that emotion to arise. So what's it doing? It starts with awareness. Watch it. The core of surrender, the absolute core of surrender, the root of it, starts with watching a stimuli arise. Watching it arise. And not trying to change it. Not trying to fix it. Watch it come up into the mind in a diffuse way, or a singular way, or a composite way, or whatever way that it presents itself. Watch it. Watch it. So this thing comes up. I don't try to change it. I watch it. I watch it. I watch it change. I watch it turn. I watch it move. I watch it. What is it? Don't call it yours. Don't call it mine. Watch it. Watch that feeling of fear. Watch that feeling of anger. Watch that desire to talk about someone. Watch that desire to steal from. Watch it. Don't do it. Watch it. Watch how fast it goes away. It could be like a sexual urge where someone feels the compulsion to act on it. You don't have to act on it. Just because there is a sexual compulsion or a compulsion of any kind doesn't mean you have to act on it. Watch it. At a certain point, when it arises again, what you're able to do is you're able to see that you didn't ask for it. You didn't call it up. You don't have any power over it. You have only the ability to see it as this point that pops up, pops up, pops up, pops up, pops up. That's how the mind works. It's this field that a fish jumps off, a fish jumps up, a fish jumps up, a fish jumps up. This one stays up and falls down. They're not up all the time. In the course of a day, it may feel like never-ending thoughts, but actually the reality of the space between the thought is usually much longer than the actual thought itself. But we don't have that awareness of the field because you think you're the thought. You think you're the feeling. You think you're the emotion. Once you have an awareness of the field by just looking at it and realizing this thing popped up and popped up, you start being more connected to the field. You start being able to see that consciousness is what even gives the mind the opportunity to fire something off. You don't have to do anything with it. If you have a thought that arises that is negative, that you want to hide from, you're not that thought. You're not the thing. I don't know how many times in this particular person's life, I've been driving down the road and all of a sudden I'll see someone walking on the side of the road and a visual will pop into mind of running that person over. Now, am I a murderer because that image popped up? Do you know where that image comes from? Do you know why it's present? Do you know how the mind gets imprinted? Do you know how the brain takes in all stimuli from everywhere, no matter what you're watching, reading, doing, seeing on a billboard, hearing around you? It takes it in, it takes it in, it takes it in. It stores it, and it creates biases. It creates images. It creates visuals. It creates the nonsense machine fueling the next nonsense machine, fueling the next one. When you allow something into your life, it will represent itself later down the line. It will characterize itself in some kind of functionality, in some kind of conglomerate of other thoughts, other feelings, other emotions, and then eventually your perception will perceive it when it arises as you're this bad thing. I need to hide from God. God, please don't hurt me. Please don't judge me because I thought about killing someone. You didn't think about it. The mind thought about it. What you are doesn't have thoughts. It is God. There is only what's present with God. And what God is not the ego. That's just a creation, a mechanism, part of this whole dance. God is not torment. God is not pour your hair out and put on sackcloth and ashes and please don't hurt me, God. That's not God. In the ultimate reality of God, there's only the presence of awareness in general, of love everywhere, what we would call compassion, truth. There's no falsehood in the world of God. All these things that we hide from or we avoid, as we talked about earlier, they're falsehoods. Fear, the acronym for fear that I've always liked, false evidence appearing real. That's a way you could look at this. So look at something when it arises. Don't try to change it. Don't judge it. Don't give it a definition. Don't call it mine. As that thing is present, surrender over the juice that it's providing you to want to call it mine. Then you create and continue that process. Now, if something is there and it's been there a long time and there's a belief system around it, that's why in the book, If You Live It, we have the 4th and 5th step. That is where the 12 steps have so much power to them because they're definable steps you can take along a pathway towards the self-realization of God is what everything actually is. Because at the end of the day, when you realize you're not your thoughts, you're not your feelings, you're not your emotions, you have a body, you're not the body, you have a mind, you're not the mind, you have a brain, you're not the brain, you get to a place where you go, well, what am I? But you still may have stories you've told yourself. You still may have belief systems. You still may have all these garbled thought patterns. That's why in the 4th and 5th step, we make a fearless and moral inventory of our lives, of all the people, places, and things and institutions that we feel have wronged us or we have wronged, that we have resentments towards, angers towards, fear around. And then we use that 4-step kind of worksheet to look at what is it? How would I define it? How has it affected different things? What's my part to play in it? Where's the fear sitting in? And you're able to see that all comes down to all resentments, all angers, all positions come down to your fear in some way or something around it, or your attachment to a belief system around it that is always rooted in an illusion. And when you see that, you're able to transcend it, especially when you're able to talk to another person about it and come out of the shame spiral, come out of the guilt of hiding. And someone else is able to communicate to you that they too have experienced this. And then you start building community. And within community, the ego, it sees that little light and it doesn't like it. It sees that little light 500 yards off in the distance and it doesn't like it. And it'll start telling you, don't finish this. You don't need to do this. It's not working anyways. Anytime there's something in your life that you know is of immense value and there's some little voice, some little knowingness, some little something that's telling you, you probably shouldn't do that because it's not going to actually do what you think it's going to do. Where do you think that's coming from? You think that's God? You think that's truth? You think God would stop you from doing something that brings more truth into your life? Choosing God is often the harder of two choices because it doesn't allow the dopamine system to continue operating. It starts dismantling. It doesn't allow the ego to do its job the way it thinks its job is. But in reality, you can take the job that the ego is doing, and you can see very clearly that the ego is a creation for you to see past the ego. It's not to be feared. It's not to be otherized. It's not to be blamed. It is the very thing that takes you to God through the mind, through transcending it. Last one, correct concentration, single-mindedness. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about is how really Buddhism uses the mind as its pathway. And what it does is it says it can wrangle the mind. It can find ownership and power over the mind. You don't find God in the mind. That's the biggest trapping of Buddhism. That's where people get stuck for lifetimes. Any religion, they get stuck in the belief system that the words or the way they're telling you to go is the way to go. Now, I'm not saying that Buddhists over millennia have not found relief, have not found God, have not become arhats, have not reached Buddhahood. I'm not saying that. But there hasn't been millions of them, even thousands of them, even hundreds of them. Why is that? Because at the root of Buddhism, the Buddha, the one we would consider the Buddha that we always point back to, Siddhartha Gautama, he had an experience by surrendering everything over that allowed the grace of the Creator to shine forth in the presence of his subjective reality, truths that go beyond what we have attachments to. And you cannot cycle that back to people through words. You can do your best. You cannot talk to people about how to be out of the mind with the mind. You can do your best. You can point towards it. For all those practicing Buddhists out here, if you have experienced the reality of God as present, which is an undeniable phenomenon that takes place and replaces any single vantage point or viewpoint or any awareness or any type of interaction with the world, at the moment it arises, then the moment preceding it. If that hasn't happened to you and you're just supposing that enlightenment has set in, you're not coming from a place where everything has been recontextualized, where the self has been presented. And if you're finding yourself blocked, if you're finding yourself going, I haven't been practicing this particular lifestyle for 40 years and nothing's changed, it's because you're trying to find God in the mind. And you don't find God in the mind. You find God literally outside of the mind. And you see the mind as just this created mechanism to point back towards the reality that something needs to be surrendered over so that the clouds can be parted and one can realize that God was always there. And that what you are is what's always been there, and what you are will always be. And there's no separation between you watching this and this person saying this. You will not find God in the mind. You will not find God in trying to wrangle the mind. What you will find is you will find the ability to not give as much emphasis to thoughts or feelings or emotions. But when we look at them, as we've talked about in previous ones, when we are aware of them and we surrender our attachment to them, it doesn't mean that we can stop things from arising in the future. It means that when things arise in the future, we see we are not that. We see that there is a blessing to be shown as for us in that moment of that thing arising. You can't stop your mind from operating. One of the blessings of a monastic lifestyle is that you take the stimuli of the world away, but then you adopt an entire new stimuli rooted around the falsehood that the mind is where you're going to find God. I'm not saying you don't find the reality of the self in living a monastic lifestyle. What I'm saying is really the best that Buddhism can do, if you take this language all the way to the end, is you will be reincarnated. You will come back into the body because it will take you into the void. If you continue to go down the pathway of the Eightfold Path and you follow the mind the entire way, eventually you will reach a place where it feels as if there is no mind. And there is this funny crossover that allows you to experience the void. And the void is no thingness. But it doesn't mean you've transcended humanness. One can experience the void in deep moments of samadhi, deep moments of meditation. You can have respites in it. You can find satisfaction and peace in it. But you're not the void. The ultimate is not the void. The ultimate is the realization of God as all things in itself, once, everywhere, one thing, with the experience of that being an effulgent, immense, beyond word expression of love coming in and out of every molecule, before every molecule, and the sponsor of all things, in all directions, exploding outward and outward at once. It is an immense power, a definite thing with no single attribute. All this is shared with you because whether you are a practicing Christian and you believe the religion is God, whether you're Hindu and you believe that a particular visual is God, and that's where you're hung up, whether you're a Buddhist and you believe you're going to find God in the mind, they're all good pathways. They're all fine measures to move down. But God is not the religion. God is not the image. God is not the mind. Those are all pieces of content that come from a greater context that will point back to God. But they're not God. I hope some of this is of value to people. hope some of this, what I would say is that anything in here that was not of value to the spiritual seeker, ask God to really let that pass through and not imprint. And that which is of value for you to go back to and continue looking at over and over and over and over again until it sinks in such a way that you see it's not the words, but it's the truth behind the words that's what's important to resonate with. Again, you don't know God through words. The Eightfold Path, Four Noble Truths, if you live it, all these different pathways, you have to walk them. You have to walk this pathway to know God isn't found in the mind. If you argue with this person about that, you don't know God. If you argue about a religion with someone, you don't know God, because who cares? It's much better to be happy than to be right. And everyone's right. For wherever you come from a level of consciousness dictates your rightness. And it just so happens that very few realize that there's higher levels of truth that are more correct, but everyone's right. Who cares? Believe what you want to believe. Who cares? Chase after God. Lift the level of the sea so all ships float higher. And you realize that you don't need to convince anybody of anything. You just are. Because what you are is power, not force. What you are is context, not content. Till next time, peace, love, happiness, joy. Please check back in. Again, these will always be free. Check in at ifyouliveit.com for further content, kind of diving into this. And I'm glad you're here. Many blessings. Have a great rest of whatever it is, day, evening, night, morning, weekend, week, month, when you find us. Goodbye.